I'm going to give my views on the state of the election at this point. I know it's not popular to, just like politics and religion, there's never a winning side. There's only opinions, and of course, opinions are only important to people who give them. But I'm looking at this race and I'm asking myself, why is this a contest? You've got one man on the other side who, by all rights, should be in jail. I know there are a lot of people who don't agree with that. But the judicial system, the way it runs, would have other people in jail real fast. They'd already have them in jail. Either that or they'd be on pretrial detention. I'm not going to go into the specifics. Everyone knows Trump, and everyone knows what he's done, what he hasn't done at this particular point in the election. But my question is, why is it so close? I feel the reason for that, if you look back the way this country was formulated, you don't have to go back all the way back to where the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. Just go back to as far as the Civil War. If you look at the lines of demarcation as far as the slave states and the non-slave states, you'll see a similarity as to where political views lie today. South of the Mason-Dixon line, most of the states that were actually slave states, or that was, they were okay with slavery, are still the states that are in red, deep red today. And, you got to think that the generations of the people who fought the Civil War, the generations after that, what they were taught, what their parents taught. I'm not saying everyone's like that lives in these states. I'm just giving a general synopsis. But the generations, there are people still disenfranchised about the Civil War. The Southern or the Confederacy didn't call it the Civil War. They call it the War of Northern Aggression. Because they didn't believe, they thought it was the government flexing their military might and overreach. Now, if it was just about a handful of issues, that would be one thing. You're talking about enslaving people, taking human beings and making them into slaves. Now, the reason why that was, and looking at the psychology back then, is that the northern states were industrialized. They didn't need slaves. They had railroads. They had industrialization. So most of it was done in that manner. But the southern states, they didn't have that opportunity. The southern states had to rely on manual labor in order to advance their economy. You're talking about cotton. Cotton was a valuable commodity, not only here in the United States, but abroad as well. So since they didn't have the machinery or the industrialization as the North did, they held fervent to the fact that they wanted to keep their slaves. Now, of course, it's not morally correct, but I'm just letting you know that economically it made sense. And of course, back then in slavery, even going back to the Revolutionary War, that was commonplace. George Washington had slaves. A lot of the founding fathers had slaves. This was something that was normal back then. Of course, as we know, it's inhumane and it's not normal. In regards to Abraham Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Not like the Republicans we have today. He was actually a thinking man. And I'm not talking about all Republicans that vote in the Republican Party. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the handful of people who know better, but decide they're going to turn a blind eye to what's going down, or they're going to follow a certain agenda because it serves them politically to do so. But Abraham Lincoln, and even I'm down here in D.C. and I used to do tours in D.C. And etched on the wall of the Lincoln Memorial was this. I'm sort of ad-libbing now, but Abraham Lincoln had said, his first priority wasn't to free the slaves with the Emancipation Proclamation. Abraham Lincoln's desire was to preserve the Union, and he would do it. Come hell or high water, he would do it. And engraved in the Washington Memorial is a statement, and he says pretty much, if I could free not one slave and preserve the Union, I would do so. if I could free all slaves and preserve the Union, I would do that also. So his main priority wasn't really to free the slaves as much as it was to undermine the military might and the economic might of the Confederate States. So it was a military move. It was a military strategy. I'm sure he was a man of honor and good stature and had morals. But his main priority was of freeing the slaves, was to undermine the military and the economic might of the Confederacy. And if you don't believe it, go to the Lincoln Memorial yourself and take a look. It's on the left-hand side on the wall, and that's where he has it. Any history book will have it as well. But going back to what I was saying earlier, is that I just don't understand why it's so close. As far as sentiment, now going back to the lines of demarcation, there were agreements made with the Confederacy to where they would have more say in our political, as far as politically was concerned, and they were giving more compensation in those regards. So where smaller states or more rural areas were giving more voting rights, or just as equal voting rights as the larger states that had much, much more people. So here we have a government where the minority rules. 30% of the American people are actually choosing our leaders because of the way things are set up now. Everyone should be disturbed by that. So what I would suggest to any political party that is in power, and of course Republicans aren't going to do this because they know that they have an advantage. That's the reason why Trump can go around and say anything he wants to say. He can say anything he wants to say because he knows that it's not about the numbers. He doesn't expect to get more people voting for him. But the way the voting structure is set up with the gerrymandering and the voting districts, he knows they have an advantage and they don't have to do that much to win the election. That's why it's important everyone to get out and try to do their part. I know most of us probably think, well, my vote doesn't count. And in some instances, to tell you the truth, it doesn't. A couple of swing states are actually calling this for the presidency. The Democrats have done it before. They'll do it again. But to look at this man, Trump, it just blows my mind. I mean, we all have children. I have children. What I say is this, is can't we hold our leaders to the same standard that we would ask of our own children? Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. When we go to church, what the pastor tells us, don't commit adultery. Can we hold our leaders to at least that standard? Something to think about. Go Kamala. I'm not a Democrat, I'm an independent. But go Kamala. She's what we need in order to straighten out this country, in order to get it back on its right footing, in order to get it some sense of normalcy. Not saying that a Republican won't be a president at some point down the line. They're probably very good candidates as far as Republicans. But until they show themselves and they stop kowtowing to this man he's not good. Stop kowtowing to him in order to advance their own political agenda. Once they stop doing that and they start getting real common sense people in there who will be able to get together with the Democrats and hammer out solutions like they did back in the old days. Until that happens, I don't wish any Republican to be in any position of power. So I'm throwing my support behind Kamala. And if she wants to come by for a cup of coffee, me and my wife will accept her. Thanks a lot, and that's my 2 cents.